Okay, we are back with Don't Dwell on It, second season, coming strong. In this next segment, and it's going to be a handful of episodes, we are spending much more time thinking about the major players within the industry and their adoption of technologies. But Sydney, you wanted to really start out with railroads, and I would love to hear a little bit more about why you wanted to do that, other than, I think you framed it as in, well, they're the locomotive of the industry.
The locomotive, the megalodon for the Shark Week lovers out there. I think, starting with them is they really set the stage for tech adoption, right? They are the ones that are the pioneers of the industry. If one railroad sets the trend, in theory, the others should follow or not. But I think starting there allows us to really start from the top and work our way down of how they're impacting everyone else and, the tech that other people are able to build on top of it.
That's a sharp view. Okay.
When we talk about railroads, we talk about tech adoption. What are we even talking about here? Because tech adoption means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and that's a wide range of topics. What do you define rail tech adoption as, Harris?
That's a heavy, what do I define it as? Can you imagine if we went around Millennium Park and just interviewed people and hey, what do you think?
Make them pick out of a hat.
Yeah, we would have so many different definitions.
We really would.
So tech adoption, railroads.
Yeah, let's peel the layers back.
Talk about technology. So if you think about what technology is, it's really the combination of tools and knowledge and process to create some sort of system that is usually digitally powered to extend human capabilities. Effectively, all technology is, it is a tool, it is a grouping of tools that bring about some sort of change and extend the ability of humans to do stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So, technology, in that definition, it could be some amazing locomotives, right? It could be some amazing, really interesting invention of how do you get 2 or 3 sections of track to cross one another without causing a derailment, right? So at its core level, the railroads have really just been technology companies for a very long time, just not in the way that we tend to think about it as consumers. Yeah. So when we think about it from a technology adoption today, railroads are doing a ton. The problem is the messaging or the meaning or the purpose doesn't always resonate with the end customer. The person that's paying the freight bill doesn't really understand why you spend $1 billion or so in track maintenance a year, because it doesn't resonate with them. They just expect things to kind of move from point A to point B. The technology that they think and they care about is the portal or the interface that they might work with. And so I think one of the things that you've always banged a drum about is data availability and data cleanliness. Yeah. That's what really matters. But I think at the end of the day, tech adoption is really all about the organization's ability to adopt new tools to deliver their value. That's really it.
Harris, I just got back literally last night from Canada with a bunch of shippers, bunch of on-sites, and I also think I wanted to start with, the railroad as the first node of our mini-series because, shippers are frustrated. Why is it that the railroads have been around for 200 years and we're still having this conversation around tech adoption and the frustration behind why are they not continuing to lead the charge? Harris, you've taught a class or two in your lifetime. If the railroads were one of your students, what would you grade them when it comes to tech adoption?
Good question. Look, I think railroads are doing better than most people give them credit for. I'd give them B+.
Okay. B+. Why is that?
Yeah, look, the industry struggles from just kind of always seeming like they are behind the times. And so I think once you kind of get that moniker, it's easy for people to overlook some of the strides that you might make. And so some of the improvements that the railroads are making, right? CSX just came out yesterday and acknowledged that they had done a ton of lifting around a new modernization strategy. I think they're saving themselves, they've wiped out 57,000 reports and they're taking in a ton of different insights. Okay, that's meaningful.
That's progress.
Look, the frustration's real. So there's absolutely no doubt about that. But I think one of the biggest tropes in the industry has and continues to be that railroads are large and lumbering and insensitive to the needs of customers. And I don't really picking a side there, but I think one of the really interesting things is that if you think about railroads, what is the one value that they have that underpins everything that they do? And it's about safety. And so railroads are not a they're not leaning into risk in the way that I think that we've normally accepted as consumers of technology in other spaces. And so just by nature of that, they're going to prioritize risk mitigation over innovation. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't care about their customers. It doesn't mean that they're immune to the challenges of technology. But what it does mean is that things need they need a much longer time horizon to come to fruition within the rail space. And there's a much higher bar of adoption just by nature, because this is a 24/7 outdoor, in your face, hard-nosed operating environment. So the tech has to work. There's no whoopsies, there's no hallucination. Things have to actually work. And so I think that is one of the internal barriers that a lot of people forget when they go to town trying to bang railroads for not being innovative enough.
I actually never really thought about it from that lens, Harris, around safety being one of the barriers. What are some other barriers that are friction points for railroads adopting tech?
Yeah, look, it's easy to forget the piece around safety. I mean, the majority of meetings at a railroad start off with a safety briefing, but that's not something that we would know as the general public or even as customers, because it's not something that we see on a day-to-day basis. Because there is such a high bar for the functionality of the underlying technology, it has to work. It has to work in rain. It has to work in snow. It has to work in a giant power outage. Yeah. And so if we think about that as rail being a very critical aspect of our supply chain infrastructure or transportation infrastructure, then guess what? It's going to look a little bit more like a bank or an airline. And so if we think about it, a couple of years ago, there was a massive outage across the airline industry, right? I think it took Delta like 5 days to actually come back. And you were walking through an airport and you would just see these blue screens of death across all of the airlines.
That's why I'm a United girl, Harris.
And it was really funny because there was a fake meme posted by not Southwest Airlines, but the theme is everybody else is crashing. I guess you're not making fun of us for using the mainframe anymore. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of the underlying thesis. If you really think about it, how often does the mainframe go out? Like never. Yeah. Cloudflare goes down, AWS goes down, and the mainframe is still just happily functioning. And so I think that is the other aspect that we kind of forget is like, yeah, when a railroad has an outage, it's bad and it's awful and it's ugly, especially around a merger. Yeah. But the truth is it doesn't go out all that often. It's
few and far between.
Yeah. It is. I would say compared to some other tech services that we all use and depend on, it's probably even more reliable than that. But I distinctly remember this instance where an RFID scanner broke down on the main line. And so every train that we had going past there, we would kind of miss a car. And so we would expect the train to have, 80 cars or 90 cars. And so it would always be one short. And so that for me was particularly frustrating because at that time I was in a role where I was having to use the mainframe to manually scan through the contents of every train and look at that consist. And so every time that there was a mismatch, there would be like pandemonium. We would have to call this desk and call the dispatcher to make sure things were actually lining up, that we weren't missing a car somewhere like in the middle of the transit. Yeah. Because oftentimes like those trains were carrying UPS or FedEx or JB Hunt. And so that was like a distinct core memory of why the technology at the basic trackside level has to work. Because if that doesn't work, everything else breaks down.
Harris, I'm gonna press you a little bit on that. You mentioned
why am I not surprised?
Common denominator. You mentioned it has to work. Does it work?
Yeah. Depends on the exact definition of working, right? So I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but I think that's unfortunately the corner I've been backed into. So I'll say, look, when I was employed, I saw plenty of instances where the technology worked 99.998% of the time. The challenge is that the failures that we would see on maybe an RFID scanner not scanning correctly or things like that, those are unfortunately systemic things. And at the scale that the railroads are operating, it gets real painful really quickly. So if you have one of those defects, the number of trains that you're operating on the network any given day, multiply that by a factor of 100, 200, 500, whatever it is, it gets really painful really quickly. I think internally there's a lot of frustration, but from a cultural standpoint, I think the employees have figured out a way to work around a lot of the gaps in the technology, and they've made it work. The railroads are nothing if not a story of resilience, right? Externally, the definition of working, I think, is much more broad, and the expectations are totally different, right? If I just need a rail car to scan for my own record keeping for a yard inventory system, that's great. As a shipper, I needed to do much more than just scan. Like so my needs are differently. So to answer the question directly, it works for the function of the industry, right? It works like a bank, but why have we had so many other pseudo banks and mini banks pop up? Because the actual banks like Wells Fargo are not serving the actual 100% of the needs of their customers. And I think that's somewhat what we're seeing in other transportation modes as well.
It sounds like it works. It may just not be meeting the needs for the current 2026 expectations.
Yeah, that's fair. And candidly, those expectations that gap is only getting wider.
Harris, finish the sentence. Railroads will fully embrace technology when?
When it financially benefits them.
That's fair. Is money the main factor?
Yeah, absolutely. I love putting on the railroad hat, by the way. This is a great place to be.
I feel like you're like the Monopoly man right now, like monocle and all.
I could be. No. It's fundamentally it's about money. It's about the time horizon to generate the value. And so, is it reducing cost or is it driving top line revenue? And if it's not clearly doing those in a very short form, it's hard to wrap your arms around it.
Is there a sense though that if it was more culture related, could that have an end result of money?
Oh, I don't think the culture piece is. I think it's easy to maybe point a finger at that. This is not culture. Railroaders figure out how to get things done every single day, and they were very resourceful people. That's just like that is the absolute name of the game.
Yeah,
it's not about culture. It is absolutely about where the allocation of resources is going and what is the time horizon to actually generating that return on the investment. I think in other industries, I think we all know this, there is a absolute patience to see how things will play out and a willingness to dial in an adjustment.
Yeah.
Railroading is a 24/7 outdoor in-your-face sport. It has to work on day one or it's hard to give it some time to room.
There's no testing. There's no room for error. It's either it's going to work and we're doing it or nothing at all is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very black and white way to paint it.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there is a high bar for innovation.
Okay, so that might be fair for class ones, but tell me about shortlines. Where do they play in when it comes to tech adoption?
Yeah, it's a good question. Shortlines, unfortunately, don't have the same balance sheets and budgets that class ones do. And so a lot of their quote unquote innovation comes in a much smaller fashion. And so they've tended to innovate their operating model or their ability to deploy locomotives or crews in a really unique way. There is an entire layer where we're seeing just a lot of change from their operating model, the technology that they're using. And I think oftentimes you think about it as one singular industry, but I think candidly, there are some smaller, more like form fit pieces of innovation that I think shortlines are beginning to take up. What is one piece of technology railroads need to adopt right now?
An API feed.
Oh, like a real one is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay, why?
I mean, that's the modern times. We need to be better integrated. We need more of modern era technology if they're going to start being able to produce more.
But what if my flat file infrastructure EDI just gets the job done?
Isn't that the name of the game with why they're not pushing the tech adoption? It gets the job done. What about exceeding expectations? What about an A+ versus a B+?
Interesting. So I'm going to put on the railroad hat here. Like, what difference does it make? Like, I'm just sending data. Like, what does it do for me internally as an organization?
Yeah, it's fair. But I think it starts to show, one, people that work within the rail industry that you're thinking forward-looking about where the tech, is going. But also, just because it's data, there's other ways you can send different types of data if you have an API set up versus EDI.
Oh, so it isn't worth my time to spend 6 weeks unpacking COBOL and to rewrite the EDI?
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
So, we graded the railroad. What if we actually did it by railroad? And what would we rank each class one when it comes from least to most tech adoption or tech forward?
Okay. All right. How much are we extracting all bias out of this?
I think so.
Okay. That's a good play. So I think if we were to rank these top to bottom,
Yeah.
and man, I feel like there's probably going to be a hit person outside the building when I
was
get
gonna
out of
say,
here.
Don't come for us.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it probably goes Norfolk Southern, CSX,
Yep.
then BNSF,
Yep.
then CPKC, then CN,
Yep.
and then UP.
I would agree. Feels like from what we've talked about, takes a while for tech to happen on the railroad side for a number of reasons. One, needs to be worth the investment. Two, safety needs to be top priority. Safety comes first.
Absolutely.
It needs to work. How do we still push for the rail to adopt tech in the 21st century with, the expansion of AI, with telematics being a hot topic in the industry, with, trucking being able to solve these types of problems? What do we do to continue to try to push for a competitive advantage?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if we zoom out really quickly and we think about other modes of transportation, trucking's a really good example. It almost feels like there is a very linear and at times exponential adoption of technology for a variety of reasons. I think from just a structural standpoint, if you can save or make another dollar at that scale in that market, it really matters. But that only matters because there's so much competition across that, right? And so I think so that curve looks very smooth and accelerating. Rail tends to feel like it's not that, right? There's a sharp spin up and then there's kind of a flat line. So it tends to look more like an S curve, candidly. Yeah. I think what we've seen, and telematics is actually a really good example. Telematics, or the remote monitoring of trains and the control of trains, was actually brought about through a government kind of enforcement many years ago. Positive train control is really what we're talking about here. The challenge is the industry fought it back and called it an unfunded mandate. But then, if we think about 2014, 2015, kind of that curve, a similar mandate came out from the government for the trucking space, right? What was it? Telematics, ELDs, right? So tale of two cities there. But what really needs to happen for tech adoption to really accelerate within the rail industry is there is going to have to be there is a higher bar for the proof of that technology working in that space. And the challenging piece is if you're building in rail, you have to damn well be serious about what you're doing, because the bar for showing what you got is much higher. And so I think that's really what it's going to take. It's not going to be government intervention. It's not going to be a consortium. It's not going to be all of these things. It's going to be folks truly understanding that the technology works, and it works for the end customer in the way that it potentially drives value, or it works for the supply side or the carrier in a way that it actually decreases expenses. If you can prove those two things well, and you can operate 99.9999% of the time and have that really good uptime, you've earned a seat at the table.
Hey, thanks for listening. We're excited to dive into more episodes around different verticals and how they are adopting tech or why they're adopting tech. But you'll catch us next time. Thanks for tuning in.